The Irishman is directed by Martin Scorsese and is about Frank Sheeran, basically a mob hitman who becomes very close and connected to Jimmy Hoffa and is connected to his mysterious disappearance in real life. And it stars Robert De Niro, Al Pacino, Joe Pesci, and to be honest, it's hard not to kind of geek out when they're all on screen together, because this is the first time that Al Pacino's been in a Martin Scorsese movie. This is the first time that Pesci and Pacino have been in a movie together. So to see all these people in a movie together, it's exciting to see these actors together. But I was lucky enough to actually see this movie in theaters last week, and I've taken a little bit just to think about it. I've let it sit for a minute, because it's one of those movies that I feel like you need to let it sit for a minute before you really have an idea of how you felt about it, at least in my opinion. It gets better the more I think about it. Now, I've been excited for this movie for a while. It's the only non-Star Wars reaction video I've done for this channel was for the first Irishman trailer, because I've been excited for it. I've known about it ever since it went into development and it had its cast announced. So I've been waiting for this movie for years. I keep track of everything Scorsese does, and luckily it delivers. Now, I did come out of this movie feeling a little bit different than I thought I would about it. This movie isn't like Goodfellas, which I think is what a lot of people are expecting. Because Goodfellas has a lot of energy to it, where it's these people doing these crazy things the entire time, and then of course getting caught for it. This one, The Irishman, is a lot more methodical in its approach to its characters. It gives them time to really observe their environments and really you can see them thinking on screen, and as the audience you can figure stuff out at the same time as the characters are figuring it out, which is a very cool thing that Scorsese's doing with this movie. Now, this movie is very well written too, and that of course is thanks to Charles Brandt, who wrote the original book, and Steve Zalian, who wrote the screenplay, who writes an amazing screenplay for this movie. Pretty much every scene is useful. One of the biggest complaints about this movie is its length, and it is almost 3.5 hours long, and you do feel that length at times, and some of the scenes might not feel necessary, but they do use their time essentially for the story. They don't waste any time on screen, which is something Scorsese is great at doing with his longer movies. And of course everybody knows that Scorsese's doing a good job with this movie, and I'll kind of move away from that a little bit, and I want to talk about the acting in this movie. Now, Robert De Niro as the lead does something different that I've seen from him. This is the best performance I've seen from him probably this decade, I would say. He does not feel like he's always in control of what's going on, which is different from his other characters in Scorsese movies, because it felt like he was always trying to take control and everything. But this character actually fumbles with his words when he's trying to talk to people, when he's nervous or anxious, which is very different. It's very realistic, which I thought was a very interesting choice to make for this character. I thought it was a very good acting choice. Pesci is amazing to see back on the screen. He's kind of been in semi-retirement for years now, so seeing him back on screen in anything, I'm excited for. But he does a great job. He has fantastic screen presence, and he's intimidating for a guy of his stature and everything, and I think that was the whole thing with Goodfellas too. He is intimidating on screen. He does have great screen presence for a criminal mob or mobster character. But I think probably the best performance of this movie comes from Al Pacino, which is awesome. Because Pacino plays Hoffa, and Hoffa's character is basically just the guy who gets too in over his head with these dangerous people. He is very brash, he's loud and everything, and it's pretty much a perfect role for Pacino, because Pacino's known for yelling and everything, but it is good to see him yelling with good direction and a good script, because it works well rather than him just being Pacino on screen. He's actually playing this character very well, and I do think that his performance is probably the best in this movie, and I think that's awesome, because for the main cast, Pacino hasn't been nominated for an Oscar since he won for Scent of a Woman. Pesci hasn't been nominated for an Oscar since he won for Goodfellas. De Niro, of course, was nominated for Silver Linings Playbook, but his only other nomination before that was Awakenings. So there's been big gaps, and all three of these iconic actors accolades for their work and everything. So I think that Pacino especially is probably going to get in at the Oscars. I really hope he does. I think it's one of the best performances of the year. This movie looks fantastic. I love the way that it's shot. It's edited, of course, very, very well. That's thanks to Thelma Schumacher, who's been working with Scorsese for years now, and she does an amazing job with her editing every single time. But one of the things I do have to point out is that they do use basically CGI de-aging makeup on the main characters in the movie. And while the very first scene that they use it in, it is very off-putting, and it does look kind of strange in the very first scene, pretty much every scene after that, it looks pretty great. Especially once it gets to a certain point where it's not that unbelievable for the actors to be that age with just regular makeup. So it works very, very well throughout the movie. But my favorite scene in this movie, which I think epitomizes Scorsese's direction and just the storytelling, is a scene about 2/3 of the way through the movie where basically all the characters are in one room for a celebration, and you see these character dynamics and these characters work, like talking within each other and bouncing around the room and seeing these different conversations and everything, and how each character interacts with different ones. And I think it's done so well that I mean, of course, because it's a story, it lets you know what characters are thinking, and it builds a lot of suspense with the plot, which you'll have to see once you see the movie. But I think that this movie is done incredibly well. Like I said, my only main gripes are with the de-aging. CGI makeup looks a little off in its first scene. I do think that this movie feels a little long, but like I said, it uses its time well. But this is a very different movie from Scorsese. It's more along the lines of Silence and Last Temptation of Christ, where it's more about humanity rather than excess with like The Wolf of Wall Street. And you go out with a kind of melancholy feeling, and I think that's what he wants you to leave with. Scorsese could say that this is his last movie, and I think it'd be a great finishing point for him. I think that a little bit of how he feels about life, well, probably a lot of it, goes into this movie and everything, like I said, with that kind of melancholy ending. And I think that this is one of the best movies of the year. It's one of my favorite movies of the year. I think it's incredibly well directed, well written, well shot, well acted, well edited, and I'm so happy that it was able to meet my expectations I think that it will only get better on rewatches. But I highly recommend watching this movie. I hope that you're able to see it in a theater. If not, it's on Netflix now. Go watch it. But I'm going to be rating The Irishman a 9.5 out of 10. Now, have you guys taken the time to watch it yet? Let me know what you thought, and I'll be back with another video.